views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Good evening and welcome to Bronx Talk. Right before our eyes, the world has changed. Where we used to write letters and mail them, now we have the internet and send email. We used to go to the library to find books and magazines. Now we download them and read them online. You can take classes and earn a college degree online, and there are incredibly fast and efficient forms of communication, whether sending texts and photos or interacting with social media. Just a short time ago, there was nothing called social media. Now, it practically rules our lives, from telling friends about your vacation all the way to changing the course of presidential campaigns. But, and there is a but here, not everyone has the same access to the internet, whether in their homes or if they're simply moving about the city. And that's what today's and tonight's show is about, the digital divide, getting everyone in the Bronx connected wherever they are. We have two innovative thinkers with us tonight, each one coming at bridging that divide in a different way. This is going to be a fascinating look into the future. If you have questions or comments, then send an email to us at BronxTalk@BronxNet.org or post it on our Facebook page, and we'll read it on the air during a future edition of our program. For the here and now, he is the Deputy Commissioner of the city's DOITT, which is the Department of Information Technology and Communications. Al Jenkins, good evening. Thank you for joining us.
Pleasure.
And also a technology innovator who founded a company called Netcher that brings Wi-Fi into your home, Marlon Jenkins. We should establish there is no relationship between the two other than they happen to have the same last name, one of those little moments of synchronicity that happens in life sometimes. But good evening, Commissioner, and good evening, Marlon Jenkins. Thank you for joining us. Commissioner, let's start with you. Why the need for Link NYC, which really is the product the city has now rolled out? And we're going to break that down for our viewers in detail. But just give us the background. Why did we need Link NYC?
Well, you know, the need arose because of the need to proliferate broadband services around New York, specifically to the underserved. And in conjunction with that, there was an aging, archaic payphone system around the city of New York that was no longer being used and had very little capacity left for the public to be able to gain access to using payphone services. And so the city sent out an RFP for proposals for creative and innovative designs to replace that old city furniture with new furniture in the city, and we selected City Bridge as the franchisee that had the most creative and innovative design to replace those payphones in the city. That was the need for Link NYC.
I'm only smiling because you use the word furniture, and most of us think about that like as our couch and our table lamp and everything else.
Sure.
But for you IT guys, the furniture means what?
Furniture means all of those public facilities, infrastructure within the city's rights-of-way. So furniture could be classified as streetlight poles or fire call boxes and or bus station locations and or anything permanently affixed to the city's rights-of-way, in which the city has control or ownership over, or may be able to exchange with franchisees for providing new services.
So what's fascinating about this to me is that you use the word furniture, but there is this interconnected infrastructure already? In other words, we talk about, everything that runs underground. Have you ever seen some of these books that, open up the city and you get a cross-section of what's under the ground?
Sure.
There is already this infrastructure because of paid telephones, which I can't even remember the last time I used a paid telephone, or any of us have used a paid telephone. And you're saying that has existed, and now you're going to use that infrastructure to do what?
So the infrastructure has already been existing. Some of it is very old, and a lot of it has to be replaced. And so the idea of actually deploying new fiber throughout the 5 boroughs of New York City to accommodate new conduit and new fiber runs that are replacing sometimes an old and dilapidated fiber network that's already underground is the mission of deploying the links, and that is really the large part of the program. So with respect to having water and sewer and utility and other services underground, we also have this old aging fiber network, and that fiber network is really owned by a variety of different agencies in the city, to include payphone and to include public safety and to include electrical services, etc. And what we're doing is replacing some old conduits and running new fiber to existing payphone locations and replacing it with new.
And what will the public see?
The public will see, at the end of the day, a sleek, sophisticated kiosk on the street that will remove the old and eyesore payphone that was once on the street, predominantly banks of payphone locations. And so there's payphone locations predominantly on every intersection in New York City. So we're removing many of them and replacing them with a sleek and sophisticated kiosk.
And on that kiosk will be a source for Wi-Fi, so that people, if they walk around with their laptops, but certainly with their phones, they can just log right on and get connectivity. That really is the bottom line, is access to connectivity.
Sure. So, the idea of Link NYC is to create ubiquity and some contiguous services of Wi-Fi service at gigabit speeds with a range of about 150 feet from every single kiosk and or more. And so in many cases throughout the city where we've located kiosks now, the user has experienced a ubiquitous internet connectivity. So as you're walking down the street, you're able to maintain Wi-Fi calls or streaming videos or other types of connections that you've gotten throughout locations of overlapping signal from Wi-Fi kiosks along an avenue.
Right. We're going to break this down. I know the department has a short video we're going to show. I want to bring Marlon Jenkins into the conversation. So you're coming at this same concept of the digital divide from a different perspective, in that you want to bring Wi-Fi, but you're doing it through homes.
Right.
Talk to me about how that works.
Yeah, I mean, like Do It and Link NYC, I realized that there are many neighborhoods, many homes, about a little less than a million households now that are still not connected to the internet, and that's in New York City alone. So if you take into consideration what the mayor has been talking about since he was elected, and even prior to his election, about this growing disconnection between the rich and the poor, a lot of that is based around internet access. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that it's internet access while they're poor. I'm just saying that internet access, due to their lack of income, is one of the things that's cut in the household.
Now, how are you going to be able to do that? Now, we all know, we see the ads, and certainly many of us subscribe to the general services, whether it be Optimum or Verizon or some other provider. How are you doing that outside that structure, or are you working within those structures?
It's a little bit of both.
Like furniture. Did I learn a new word?
It's a little bit of both. I think, first of all, what we've realized when we did a demonstration project of our product, and what we've noticed is that while there's a need for free internet access, there's also a lot of people who don't want free internet access. And what I mean by that is, typically when you provide free internet access, the reason why it's free is because you're able to provide advertising. That's how every model works typically. Link NYC is the same type of thing. They put up these kiosks, and in exchange for you receiving free internet access, they show an ad. One of the things, we have to do the same type of thing. So what we found is that there are a lot of homes who don't want that. So what we've had to do, who don't want free internet access because they don't want to deal with the advertisements.
I see.
So what we've had to do, we've modified our service a little bit. So what happens with us is we provide services into every single home. some through wireless technology, some through wireline technology, but the point is that every home that we will service will receive some form of internet access, and typically we're not going any less than 25 megabits per second, because that is the baseline both the FCC standards established and also that we recognize is needed for the ubiquitous services of today.
People would be frustrated with less than that, because you say, gee, we have the internet, but yet they can't watch a video, they can't download something, or it takes 3 weeks to see a movie or something like that.
Right.
How are you able to back off the advertising but still make it work?
Well, there's going to be the people who are receiving internet access into their homes at 25 megabits per second, which is our lowest product, they're going to be paying $20 a month. Now, let me tell you what the significance of that is. Right now, traditionally in the internet space, and New York City is a little different because we have a lot of internet service providers who are able to provide $20 for service, but it's only 10 megabits per second. You can get, this average is $50 and you get about 25 to 50.
So let me just
megabits
break
per
that down.
second.
So you can get it free, but then you'll have the ads, and,
Right.
and I'm assuming they're not intrusive. They just come up
No,
on the
it's
screen,
typically an
sign on or
advertisement of
something,
some
right.
video,
which
things
we
like
do
that.
see all the time on
Absolutely,
YouTube
YouTube has
and
it, so, right.
but if you don't want those, you do have you pay
An
a
option to
fee.
pay a small fee, right?
Before we get back to our friend the commissioner and talk about Link NYC and let people understand what that is, where are you located? I mean,
We're in the Bronx.
are you already in places?
Yeah.
And what's the ultimate
Yeah,
vision, I
what
guess?
what we're doing is we're targeting the Bronx first. We work in the Bronx. My office is located in the Bronx. We've provided services in the South Bronx already. We're absolutely about to expand our services throughout the Bronx. We're looking for partnerships, and it's a process that we call hosting. And what that means is we look for both residents and businesses who would like to host with us. That's one of our mechanisms to provide broadband in a community. We look for 3 hosts on every single block in the city. It's a little different
And
from what
who
we're
would
doing.
be that host? Like, how to define
it's-
what that means to be a host?
So what a host means is there's 2 different ways I mentioned earlier that we provide services. One is through wireline services and one is through wireless services. Wireline services means that we provide a host will receive a circuit to their home. And we
see.
provide wireless internet services throughout their community based on that host. And it's one of the ways we found that we can get around some of the limitations that we see in providing broadband to every single household. So each host provides both up to 24 connections to a community, as well as providing free internet access to the street. So that's one of the things we found is a amazing way to get service everywhere.
Tremendous vision. Commissioner, this sounds good to you, right? This is-
Absolutely. The more internet, the better,
Yeah.
especially at affordable rates. And so I think it's outstanding.
Let's talk a little bit more about Link NYC.
Okay.
We have a short video, and we're going to show this video in a moment, that explains really what it is. So
Sure.
a lot of people say, well, maybe I've read about it, I've heard about it, I'm seeing it on BronxTalk. So can we do that? Let's
Sure,
let's
absolutely.
roll. This comes from the Department of Information Technology and Telecommunications. It's about a minute long, but I think it'll explain what's going on. So let it rip. So there it is, Link NYC. How do you think this will change life in the city? Will it change life in the city, or just be kind of a nice convenience?
I think it dramatically changes a life in the city for those, especially those that may not have been underserved with broadband and those that may have been unconnected. I think to the extent that the city, as well as the public at large, has benefits with respect to the economic growth and the civic use of internet services, the healthcare, the transportation sector, the public safety sector, a variety of different other vertical sectors will benefit for having free Wi-Fi on the streets at a gigabit speed that will be profound throughout the city.
I mentioned to Marlon about Cablevision or Optimum and Verizon. I would think that they're not so happy with you because the way at least my phone works is I have a provider and I use that provider all the time for when I'm walking around the city or anything else. But if you provide an alternative where I get Wi-Fi, obviously my speeds will be faster. I can download stuff if I'm in the middle of the city or check on emails I got or whatever it is, but I won't be using their networks. Are they not happy with you, the de Blasio administration, for running this program?
Certainly not. They're not unhappy. I mean, the kiosk will provide a great broadband services, but it's an outdoor services that replaces the payphone locations within in the city. And most of the Optimum and the Time Warner cables and the Cablevisions have home internet services. They too have also their subscribers that are able to actually use their handsets while they're out on their networks. But in many cases, mobile providers actually will allow you to have free internet service that you touch. And so as you, as a subscriber, roams closer to a Link kiosk, your phone automatically can now dial on a free Wi-Fi call.
Once you log in the way that
Absolutely.
was described.
Sure.
So
it's complementary to the networks.
Well, another aspect of this that people are concerned about is privacy. And we're always advised, don't do anything sensitive if you're in an airport or somewhere like that. Here you're going to be walking through the city. Should people be concerned about walking through the city and potentially having really their whole lives and everything compromised?
Well, there's no compromise to the Link NYC network. It's a fully encrypted network, and the network does not collect any personal identifiable information from any user, from any device that you use in adjacent to or in proximity to a Link NYC kiosk signal. So none of your personal information or data is collected by CityBridge, the franchisee, and nor does the city have any capacity to use any information.
Although I'm assuming that there will be, much like Google collects information, they will collect not necessarily personal information, but they will collect data of websites visited or things like that, so they can get an idea of trends and things like that, which is now standard fare, really, in Facebook and through all of the internet.
Well, the idea is not to collect any, again, personal identifiable information and no browser history from a user. And so what we do
But
is...
there may be general browser information collected from how many were visited, so you could get an idea of what New Yorkers are doing.
Certainly a traffic count and people count on the streets for us to be able to identify with small businesses the amount of traffic that would be able to be located around a particular business would be certainly something the data we collect aggregately. There's certainly sensors information that we may collect, for example, noise pollution and air quality, et cetera, that we may have inside of the sensors in time as well. So,
Marlon, how bad is the digital divide in the Bronx? I mean, how significant an issue is this? Certainly people will make an assumption, people on the lower economic scale that haven't been able to buy into the traditional, Wi-Fi and telecommunication services, we would assume they don't have access. But how difficult is this problem, and how badly has it hurt people's abilities to do better?
I mean, well, it's a very significant problem. Estimated 40 to 50% of Bronx residents don't have internet access, and even if they do, it's
incredible, really.
There's issues with maintaining connectivity. They may or may not have a computer. There's estimates stating that people are using their phones to conduct a majority of their business, but if you think about it, obviously that's not conducive to doing most businesses. You can't apply for jobs typically on a cell phone. You can't do your homework typically on a cell phone. So this is not just about providing internet access. It's also, okay, how can we leverage this opportunity to create new opportunities for those families? I'll tell you one story very quickly that clearly states it. Part of the reason why I created this company is I was walking by a library as it was closing, and there was a 6-year-old girl who was crying. And the reason why she was crying is because she was explaining to her mother that she couldn't finish her homework. Now, 6 years old, think about it, this is like kindergarten, maybe
She
first grade.
desperately wanted to,
And she
especially kids who would say, gee, I don't want to be left behind.
Yeah, I mean, so kindergarten, and this child is trying to finish her homework, and she couldn't finish it because the library closed at 6 o'clock. The mother came home at 5. Mommy got to the library at 5:30. She only had a half an hour to do that homework. But in the library, so many other people are trying to use the computers in the library that maybe she had 15 minutes. The point of the matter is she didn't finish, and she couldn't go home and finish it. So at 6 years old, this child is already learning what it means to not be connected and how it impacts their education, and who knows how that goes on further. So that mother feels bad in that situation, the child feels defeated, and this is just a small subset of what many, many families are feeling. So this need to create internet access and make it affordable and free, in our case, that's our ultimate goal, would not only solve many problems in as far as increasing opportunities, but it also change the lives of these families, and that's what ultimately we're trying to do.
What are I mean, I'm sure if I asked you, I'm going to make an assumption. If I asked you, what would you like to do? You'd like to get it everywhere. Right. But what are the issues that you face with, I mean, this is a little different from what the city might face in trying to put their infrastructure together, that you face as an individual with, frankly, a small company trying to do something that really is so massive?
I mean, the first problem that we have is that we've had to find different ways to get around what is the currently established process of providing internet service to a household, right? One of the first things you typically have to do is you have to apply for some licenses and things of that nature to have access to the fiber underground. He explained that earlier. There are tons of fiber available in New York City. The problem is it being used, right, as most effectively, and how do you use it? So we've had to find different ways who uses it. So we've had to get around that
that's why I keep bringing up the idea of the established companies, because really it's been their, I don't want to say monopoly, but that's what it is.
Yeah, I mean, and look, it's understandable. That's how it's been established. We are all fortunate because of what's taken place over the last 20 years, where the Telecom Act allowed us to decentralize, and then what happened is we re-centralized. Right. I think I've been in telecom, so I understand that whole process. And I think what we're realizing now is there's a need for us to think a little differently. There are tons of people who are not connected, so how do we solve that problem? This is one way of connecting people, but as he explained, that's outdoors. We need to find some way to connect them indoors so that the people who are using it the most when they're home doing something to creativity for themselves, they have the opportunity to do that. So it's our job in companies like ours to find ways to intuitively and solve that problem.
Commissioner, where are the locations of the kiosks? Give me the kind of the scope of work now. Where are they now? What are the plans? Certainly we want to know where they are in the Bronx and how are locations selected. I know my friends and neighbors in the Bronx, and they'll be very sensitive to the fact that some neighborhoods might get and some might not.
Sure.
So talk to me about that whole spectrum.
All right. So over the course of this franchise agreement, we will have at a minimum 7,550 Link kiosks over the 5 boroughs within the next 8 years. Currently,
that's a pretty good number.
That's a huge number.
I realize how big the city is, but that is a pretty good number.
That should help proliferate universal broadband around the city in a big way, and we will even go further than that. The fact is, in year 1, we've got about 385 Link kiosks in the ground today. 20 of those are in the Bronx. We've just started getting into the outer boroughs, leaving Manhattan. Currently, those.
Thank you.
Well, we certainly
can't help it. Got to advocate for who I got to advocate
for.
We've
been waiting to get out of Manhattan and go into the other boroughs as fast as we can. We will probably have 30 links inside of the Bronx, predominantly going up Grand Concourse at the moment, and Fordham Road, University Heights, Knightsbridge Road, etc. And those will continue to expand and proliferate across the Bronx. By this time next summer, we'll most likely have 90 or so some odd Link kiosks in the Bronx.
And within a year, you'll add maybe another 60
another
or 70.
60 or 70. And during the course of the franchise, over the next 8 years, we'll have 735 plus Link kiosks in the Bronx.
Yay. And again, how are they selected? Is it simply where we used to have a payphone, or as you say, a bank of phones, which makes it a little easier? Are those where the locations will be, or are they selected based on maybe other considerations, need, or this is where people
Sure.
walk, so that would make it more likely than
Sure.
putting it on a highway or something like that?
So there's lots of variables in terms of selecting where the link kiosks are going to go. One of them clearly is where there is sort of an ease of construction or less obstructions to deploy fiber at the moment. As I mentioned before,
And
as
so
we
you're letting that dictate to some
not
degree.
necessarily. I think our first, dictation in terms of where our link kiosks are going to go is our consultation, the franchisees' consultation, the city's consultation with elected officials. We generally go out and we speak to the borough presidents, we speak to the community boards, and they advise us as to where would be best to proliferate free public broadband services in their respective communities. We then go back and take a look at how difficult or easy it could be in terms of deploying new fiber to the locations where there's already payphones.
Right.
And to the extent there is none, we cite new greenfield locations based on the officials' decision as to where to locate those kiosks.
So right now, just to repeat, people may already see them on the Grand Concourse, and you said Fordham, Kingsbridge Road,
Right.
and some other places.
University Heights.
University Heights. Marlon, plans for expansion? Like, what's next for you?
We are actually in the process of hosting a hosting event where we're inviting 20 or 30 some odd hosts to participate in the next expansion. What that means for us is for every host, we can connect up to 24 households, and we can provide services to a third or up to a half of a block of free internet access. That's going to be the ad subsidized internet. So if we have 20 hosts, that means we're providing probably about 10 to 20 blocks.
People who want to get in touch with you, how do they do it?
Neture.co, www.neture.co.
Okay,
It's the easiest
and
way.
and they just get in there and
Yeah,
find out more
just
about
contact
it.
us,
You can
absolutely.
certainly contact us here at the show, and I'll know how to get to Marlon as well. And for you, Commissioner, what's the feedback been?
Feedback's been very positive. We've gotten a variety of different sectors that have been very happy with the link kiosks on the street now. We've gotten over 272,000 subscribers on the network. We're doing almost 8 terabytes of data
Wow.
transmission right now. So the new link kiosks on the street have been very popular with the public right now, and it's continuing to grow.
I want to see more and more and more of it. Alfonso Jenkins, Commissioner Jenkins, thank you so much. Marlon Jenkins, no relation. Thank you so much for what you're doing to build the furniture, the infrastructure in the borough of the Bronx. Folks, do we have time for viewer mail? Do we have time for that? No time? We're going to do our viewer mail next week. Then if you have further questions or comments on anything you heard on tonight's show or anything going on in the Bronx, you want to find out more about these companies and how you can access what they're doing, email it to us at BronxTalk@BronxNet.org or put it on our Facebook page, and we'll read it on the air during a future edition of our program. We'll take care of some of our viewer mail next week. We ask you to like Bronx Talk on Facebook. You can check out the archives at BronxNet.org. You find Bronx Talk on the lower right navigation bar. We thank our producer, Jayla Jubetis, who always does a great job, and our new director on the show is Michael Leone, and we thank them, the cast of thousands around here. We thank you. We thank them. We'll see you next week. Good night.
Hi, I'm David Lesh, legal correspondent to the Morning Show Open. If you have a legal question that you'd like me to answer, please send me an email at davidlesh@bronxnet.org, and I will address it on our Ask Your Lawyer segment.